Hi, this is Ryan, and I just dragged a 50-pound, $800 piece of garbage to the curb. It was one of those top-tier pro esports bucket seats, and after 3 years of pretty standard use, the premium vegan leather was flaking off onto my hardwood floor like black snow, and the cold cure seat foam had compressed into something closely resembling a park bench. Meanwhile, sitting right next to it in my office is a generic, weirdly named mesh reclining chair I bought off Amazon for $150. I originally ordered the cheap one as a joke for a stress test video, fully expecting the gas cylinder to fail in a week and drop me to the floor. But here we are 2 years later. The mesh hasn't sagged, my lower back doesn't ache, I'm not sweating through my shirt after a 2-hour gaming session. So how is a chair that costs less than a decent steak dinner physically outlasting and biomechanically outperforming the flagship model that every major streamer is telling you to buy? The answer actually has nothing to do with build quality and everything to do with a mechanical design choice the expensive brands are intentionally ignoring. We're going to flip both of these over and look at the actual physics. If you're into actually getting what you pay for, stick around and maybe hit subscribe. Okay, let's rewind. 3 years ago, I fell for the marketing. We all kind of did. I spent $800 on this absolute tank of a chair. Secret Lab, DX Racer, whatever. It doesn't really matter which specific brand because they all use the exact same core blueprint. And I get the appeal, I really do. You pull the parts out of this gorgeous, thick, matte black box. The wheelbase is heavy, powder-coated aluminum. It clinks with this satisfying heavy metal thud when you drop it on the floor mat. Screwing it together feels like you're assembling a piece of a sports car. But then you sit in it. Actually, let me be perfectly fair. For the first 30 days, it feels fine, great even. The high-density cold cure foam is stiff, and you tell yourself, ah, yes, firm support. That's exactly what my spine needs. But here's what nobody mentions on the spec sheet. That foam doesn't break in. Under the constant daily pressure of a human body, it just breaks down. By year 2, sitting on this thing felt exactly like sitting on the carpeted floor of a 1990s movie theater, just a dead, unyielding surface.
And then the peeling started. One day, you're sitting there and you notice a tiny black flake stuck to your forearm. Then you spot another on the floor. Fast forward 6 months, and the premium vegan leather looks like a shedding snake. You're literally having to vacuum up your $800 investment every 3 days. Not to mention the wings. These aggressive shoulder bolsters that curl inward on the backrest. Why are these here? Seriously. Unless my desk suddenly pulls 3 gigaseconds of lateral acceleration into a hairpin right turn, I do not need to be locked into place. All they do is restrict my arms and force my shoulders forward into a permanent slouch. So, out of pure frustration, I went on Amazon and bought the exact opposite, a $150 weirdly named generic mesh reclining chair. It showed up in a battered brown box that looked like it had been kicked out of the back of a delivery truck. The instructions were a single piece of paper with diagrams that looked like they were drawn from memory. I was putting the base together with this microscopic stripped Allen wrench, feeling the plastic star base flex slightly under my hand, and thinking, okay, the gas cylinder is definitely going to punch straight through this plastic the second I sit down. I honestly bought it expecting to use it for a week, hate it, and throw it in the garage. But it didn't snap. I pushed it up to my desk, I sat down, and immediately something felt off. Not bad off, but weird. I keep saying gaming chair when I talk about the expensive one, but what I really mean is a status symbol. You're paying for the embroidered logos, the matching stitching, the aesthetic. With this cheap mesh thing, there is zero status. It looks like it was stolen from a mid-level accounting firm in 2008. The armrests have a slight, annoying rattle to them even when they're locked. But here's what actually happened. I sat in it to edit a video. I usually have to stand up after about 90 minutes in the expensive chair because my lower back starts screaming and my thighs go numb. With the $150 mesh chair, I worked for 4 straight hours. I had 6 Chrome tabs and Lightroom open, completely lost in the workflow. When I finally stood up, my shirt wasn't glued to my back. I didn't have that stiffness in my hips. I honestly couldn't figure it out. How is this cheap,
plastic-framed, wobbly armrest-having thing actually more comfortable? At first, I thought it was just the material. Polyurethane leather, which is just a fancy marketing word for plastic, traps body heat. It just does. There's a specific, gross moment about 2 hours into a session where you shift your weight and hear that slight sticking sound of your clothes against the seat. The mesh obviously fixes that. It breathes perfectly. But the more I used it, the more I realized it wasn't just temperature. The actual geometry of how the chair moved was different. When I leaned back to watch a YouTube video, my feet stayed flat on the floor. In the $800 chair, leaning back lifted my knees up into the underside of my desk. I decided to flip both chairs over. I got on the floor and started looking at the heavy metal boxes bolted to the bottom of the seats, the tilt mechanisms. And that's when I saw it. The massive, glaring mechanical difference that the $800 brands are actively ignoring and the cheap brands are somehow getting right. So I've got both chairs flipped upside down on my office floor. It looks like a bizarre autopsy. Right in the middle of the base on the $800 chair is this heavy black steel block. It's the tilt mechanism. But when you look closely at the pivot point, the exact hinge where the chair tilts backwards, it's positioned dead center over the gas cylinder. This is called a center tilt mechanism. Now look at the $150 mesh chair. The box under the seat is completely different. It's wider, houses a visible torsion spring, and has separate connection points for the seat pan and the backrest. This is a synchro-tilt mechanism. If you don't know the difference, grab the backrest of an expensive racing chair and pull it down. The entire chair tips backward like a seesaw. The front of the seat pan rises at the exact same angle the backrest goes down. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. Here's what that actually does to your body. Let's say you're 2 hours into a session and you recline 20 degrees to get comfortable with a controller. The front lip of that rock-hard, cold-cure foam rises up and presses directly into the underside of your thighs. It acts exactly like a tourniquet. That dead, numb feeling you get in your legs, the urge to constantly shift around, it's not just because you've been sitting too long. It's because your pro-grade chair is literally restricting your blood flow. Actually, wait, that's not entirely fair. Some of the newer $800 models added a multi-tilt lock to try and bandage this problem, letting you lock the seat flat while the back reclines. But the physics are still fundamentally broken. Why? Because it's a bucket seat. The steel frame inside these expensive gaming chairs is welded together. The sides of the seat and the backrest are physically tethered by metal hinges and side bolsters. They can't move independently in a fluid motion. When I lean back in the $150 mesh beater, the synchro-tilt mechanism kicks in. The backrest drops, but the seat pan only tilts up a tiny fraction. It's a 2-to-1 ratio. My feet stay completely flat on the floor mat. My hip angle naturally opens up, which takes the compression off my lower spine. It is absolutely baffling. Synchro-tilt is ergonomic 101. Herman Miller has been doing it for decades. Every decent office chair in the world uses it. And somehow an entire industry convinced millions of us to pay $800 premium to abandon basic human biomechanics so we could look like we were qualifying for the Daytona 500. And then there's the material degradation. I was so annoyed by this that I actually took a box cutter to the underside of the $800 seat cushion. Just a small 2-inch slit through the fabric backing to see what was going on under that peeling fake leather. The foam wasn't just compressed, it had started to crystallize and harden around the edges where my thighs usually rest. When I pushed my thumb hard into the foam, it didn't bounce back. It just left a dented thumbprint in the material for almost 4 minutes. Meanwhile, the cheap chair is just woven nylon mesh stretched tight over a plastic hoop. It's a trampoline for your butt. It distributes weight perfectly because it has no fixed density to crush. Okay, let me back up for a second. I am not sitting here telling you this $150 chair is a flawless masterpiece of engineering. It isn't. It's janky. The hard nylon caster wheels sound like a skateboard rolling over gravel every time I move.
If I lean heavily to the left, I can feel a terrifying millimeter of flex in the plastic starbase. And the armrests, man, these 3D armrests drive me insane. They slide forward too easily, so every time I grab them to push myself up to stand, they violently click out of position. But the core engine of the chair, the tilt geometry, the continuous pressure distribution, the thermal regulation, is objectively, physically superior to the flagship model, which leaves me staring at this massive, heavy, peeling metal paperweight in the corner of my room, trying to figure out exactly what I paid a $650 gamer tax for. Because if it's not durability, and it's definitely not ergonomics, what the hell are we actually buying? We're buying cosplay. That's really what it comes down to. I've been tearing down office gear for a long time, and you start to notice these cycles of manufactured hype. A decade ago, someone decided that because esports pros sat in aggressive, heavily branded bucket seats on stage to look cool on camera, that was the gold standard for sitting at a desk. We accepted a massive downgrade in physical comfort just to own a piece of that aesthetic. But if it were my money, and it is because I bought both of these out of pocket, I wouldn't just tell you to go buy a $150 beater mesh chair and call it a day. Actually, I almost did exactly that. When I was outlining this a few days ago, my initial thought was just save your money, buy the cheap one, deal with the flaws. But that's irresponsible. The cheap chair does have physical failure points. The base is plastic, the wheels are garbage, and the gas cylinder is a low-grade Class 2 that will absolutely blow a seal within 18 months. You'll be right in the middle of a workflow or a game, and you'll feel the seat just slowly, tragically start sinking to the floor. So here is the actual tested reality check. Here is what you do.
You buy the $150 mesh chair, a Seho, a Tacova, whatever variant has synchro-tilt and good mesh tension. Then you immediately spend $55 on Amazon upgrading it before you even assemble it. You buy a $30 set of single-wheel polyurethane rollerblade casters and a $25 Class 4 SGS-certified heavy-duty gas cylinder. Assembly is identical. You just drop the heavy-duty cylinder into the plastic starbase instead of the cheap one. You snap the rollerblade wheels in instead of the hard nylon ones. The difference in how it feels is ridiculous. I push away from my desk now and the chair just glides across the hardwood silently. No scraping, no catching on the edge of the floor mat. The Class 4 lift holds firm. No vertical spongy give when I sit down. I haven't tested this specific upgraded rig for a 5-year stretch yet, so grain of salt, but the basic material science heavily points to this outlasting the premium bucket seats. You're entirely bypassing the two main points of failure: PU leather delamination and foam compression. For roughly $200 total, you get 90% of the ergonomic benefit of a high-end setup with zero swamp back and a mechanism that actually respects the pivot points of your spine. Now, you're probably thinking, Ryan, if I have an $800 budget, shouldn't I just buy a real ergonomic chair? Yes, absolutely. If you have that kind of cash to burn, don't buy a racing chair and don't buy the $150 mesh one either. Go find a local office furniture liquidator or check the used market for a refurbished steel case Leap V2 or a Herman Miller Aeron. You can usually find a pristine Leap for around $400. It's built like a Soviet tank, the synchro-tilt is flawless, and the armrests don't rattle when you look at them. But those commercial chairs don't recline 150 degrees, and they don't have kick-out footrests. If you live in a dorm or your home office is the size of a closet and you physically need one piece of furniture to serve as an upright workstation and a lounge chair for watching movies, the upgraded beater is the mathematically superior choice. Avoid the polyurethane racing seats. They are an aesthetic trap. Buy the cheap mesh, spend the extra $50 to bulletproof the suspension, and save the other $600 for a monitor that won't give you eye strain. I've got the rest of this $800 peeling paperweight boxed up to drag to the dumpster tomorrow. If this saved you from making a very expensive mistake, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.